steps there. Yeah. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Chad Eric Bergman. I'm the Associate Dean for the School of Music, Art, and Theater. And tonight in the pre-show, it is my honor and privilege to present Matthias Vestager, who is the composer. And so, yay! So we'll just have a seat here. We're going to talk a little bit about what you're about to see. The questions are designed to help unpack because you haven't yet been on the journey of the Titanic. And I'm sure you'll have lots of questions afterwards. But our first question for Matthias is just tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got into music and to composing and your collaborations.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, thanks so much for having me. It's been a joy being here since Sunday and following the rehearsals, and I'm so excited for this the opening night of first time I have a piece performed in the US. It's amazing.
American premiere.
Yeah, exactly. It's a huge treat for a composer. So I don't come from a musical background. So basically, when I was 15, I bought a keyboard because I thought there was something there I needed to investigate, and then I started investigating. And thought I was going to be a pianist for many years, got into the conservatory in Copenhagen, had kind of a miserable time because I liked the music, I liked playing, but yeah, there was something that was off. And then I had always been composing on the side and thought that was something all musicians do, but it turns out it wasn't. So I started taking lessons with a composer, and then as soon as I did that, everything just fell into place, and I knew that was what I was best at. I could still find a way to work with music. And I'd always worked a lot with singers, played a lot with singers. Piano comes in handy in that way. And was always fascinated by the world of opera. And then at the Academy in Copenhagen, every year they do a project like this one for the singing students to put on some kind of opera. And there are very few operas that kind of suit these needs because you need a lot of roles and not a too long duration. And I was a repetiteur one year for one of the shows, and then I asked the head of the singing department, what if I wrote an opera for you? And then she thought that was a great idea, and that was the genesis of Murder on the Titanic, and this is now the third time it's being performed. It was premiered in Copenhagen in 19. And then it was done at another academy in Denmark in 22, and now 3 years later.
And here we are.
Yeah. Yes, yeah.
So moving to the opera, what you're going to discover when you open up the program is that there's this cast of characters that would not necessarily be on this boat.
And none of them were.
None of them were. and so the question for you is help us unpack how the imaginary world worked to bring this group of characters together and why that's significant.
Yeah. I mean, one of the biggest issues as a composer, especially if you want to write opera, is finding a librettist that you are on the same level as, that you communicate well with. When I first got the idea, I didn't know who to collaborate with, but then a friend of mine, who actually ended up singing Edgar Allan Poe in the original production, he gave me a book of poetry by a Danish poet, Lea Marie Løventin, who's sort of my generation also. And I just remember like reading 3 lines of the first poem and then immediately knowing, okay, this was the librettist to ask. And in fact, her way of writing unlocked so many things in me professionally. She's been a huge influence on me. She writes with this effortless combination of something very silly, but also very lyrical and touching at the same time. And that's also in this libretto for this opera, I think. And basically, I asked if she was open to writing the libretto, and she had never seen an opera, but she thought it sounded like a fun project. And then one of the first things she did was she sent me a list of like her suggested cast, and I just nearly fell down the chair because it had Virginia Woolf, Anna Achmatova, Atticus Finch, President Taft, all of these characters, even a character named Leo, like Leonardo DiCaprio.
Right.
So I mean, all of these characters, and immediately I was just, mustn't forget the ghost of Edgar Allan Poe, of course, is also on the boat. And immediately my head was just a whirl because I thought so many ideas, so many fun things to try out with these characters. Actually the only character I ended up asking if he could be included was historical person. His name is Domenico Mustafa, or his name was. He was one of the last castrati in the world, so these male singers who have been castrated when they were very young to preserve this high voice. And he was Maestro di Capella at the Sistine Chapel and a very respected musical figure in the late 19th century. And even the thing that made him so tantalizing to me is that Richard Wagner, considered writing a role for him in his opera Parsifal, which then would have meant that we would have had a castrato, like that role, a Wagnerian role for castrato, which as a composer, that's just, how on earth would that have sounded? And so I asked Lea if we could have him on the boat and then have him, and this is an alternate timeline, so in this version Wagner did actually write the role for him. So obviously we get to hear what this could have sounded like. Yeah, so that's, if you get a bit lost in the plot and you see suddenly there's a countertenor singing in broken German with Italian accents, that's what's happening.
That's awesome. I want to go back to Edgar Allan Poe in a moment, but I want also to, that seems to be a really important kind of Easter egg, and you had mentioned the other day that there are several other musical Easter eggs that are in this. What, as a composer, how do they come about, and can you point to a couple that we can maybe see?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, when I think about this opera, I feel like everything in it is an Easter egg somehow, because there's so many. I mean, again, with all these characters, I just knew I could go in all kinds of ways and quote all kinds of, like, incorporate so many musical styles in the piece. But, well, obviously, I mean, there's nothing in this story is really historically correct. Except for the fact that the ship sinks.
Yeah, ship sinks. And you said there were two other things.
Yeah. And then some minor details that are historically correct. One is that you will see that the servants come in and serve 3 dishes in the beginning, or 3 sets of courses, and those are actually taken from the original menus of the Titanic. And I just picked all the dishes that sounded the strangest, so like roast squab and cress, and yeah, all these weird things that I thought it would be fun for them to sing. And then, not to spoil anything, but the ship does sink. Spoiler. And it's I was a huge fan of like Titanic lore when I was a kid. I had this book about it, and one thing I remember very vividly is that when they were sitting in the lifeboats in the middle of the night, it was a very clear night, so they were able to see the stars, and they passed the time by pointing out the constellations. And I found a website somewhere that could show me exactly what constellations were visible at that point in the Atlantic at that time, specific date. And then I compiled a list of them, and the second act opens with this sort of like slow kind of interlude where all the characters, the survivors, are lying in the lifeboats and then pointing out the constellations. So yeah, some of the tiny details of the plot are historically accurate.
The Edgar Allan Poe moment seems really important to kind of this murder mystery, and it's really strange. It's really, the dramatic irony is so rich that we are trying to, or there are characters who are trying to find out who murdered Atticus Finch. When we, as an audience, know the boat is sinking. So it's kind of this, why do we do the things we do, and what propels us to solve problems, right? Can you maybe help us understand why, and it seems that Edgar Allan Poe is a through line in that, and why you chose Edgar Allan Poe in that?
Yeah, actually I think I should also just explain something, because I forgot earlier. My original idea for the opera when I approached Lea was to do some version of Murder on the Orient Express, because I thought that would work perfectly. There's a million characters, it's a great story, it's a very satisfying ending. And then we started working on that, and then quite a short time after that, Lea sent me a message where she said, wouldn't it be more funny if it was on the Titanic instead? And then my first thought was, no, that's a terrible idea. That's so weird, that doesn't make any sense at all. And then I realized probably the reason why there aren't many detective operas is because the actual detection isn't very interesting musically. You don't want to like sit around for 30 minutes while Hercule Poirot is like thinking aloud to himself. And then, you know, if we actually did it on the Titanic, it meant that at the moment when the story starts to lose pace, we can something else happens. A shipwreck happens, and then suddenly it's about that instead. And what that actually does for the structure of the piece is it divides it into two acts, where the first act is super busy. There's a million characters. They all have all kinds of relationships with each other. There's so many musical allusions. It's very fast-paced, very bizarre. And it's all very driven towards this pursuit of, okay, we must find out who the killer is. And then you have this the shipwreck, the catastrophe, which, and also in this version, it's very unclear if anyone is actually saved. It's more like a weird, dreamlike, dystopic second act where you just see people floating in icy water. So like all of this pursuit, all this activity of the first act is kind of like just jettisoned. And suddenly you just have these people, and they actually do end up solving the murder, but like in a very blasé kind of way, like it just kind of just happens. Edgar Allan Poe shows up and explains what happened. And you know, I thought that was very, very satisfying also, because it's very, very funny in the first act, and then you know, you get this very sort of introspective, kind of
You had briefly mentioned to me that Edgar Allan Poe was kind of the start of the murder mystery. Like
he invented
the genre of sorts, and so there's this ghost that comes on and is very present, and so you'll get to see that.
Yeah.
So I want to go to Atticus Finch, which is the other major point, and Atticus Finch is such a character of our time right now, right? In that we need justice and somebody to stand up and be that voice, and so there is the ghost of Atticus Finch becomes something very monumental in this, and that is.
Yeah, I mean, actually, of course, he's on the boat. He has a lot of different significances in the story. Actually, his wife, Louise, is one of the main characters. And I think Leah was very interested in how this woman, someone who's married to such an important and respected man, how she would kind of come into her own once he is murdered, and she has to kind of like solve the mystery. So there was partly that, obviously also the significance of someone like Atticus Finch with what he symbolizes being the victim. And then actually right as the ship hits the iceberg, there's a loud noise in the orchestra, and then the chorus, or everyone on stage sings, "What was that? Is this the soul of Atticus?" So there is kind of this feeling of like a wake-up call, of like returning to the core of what is actually important, a reminder in a way, I would say.
Yeah, seems really important right now.
Yeah.
So something I noticed is this juxtaposition between the myriad of imagined stories about that Titanic. So we have the movie, we've got a museum thing about it, you've got your opera, there's another musical happening right now.
There's another Danish opera about the Titanic.
There's another Danish opera about Titanic. But this is what captures our imagination, right? It's these stories, and we can fabricate them and move them. And the very important moment that I took is that what happens to all of the secrets that are lost when the people sank and died. And that comes up in this, and this idea got me thinking about what are the secrets that I'm holding on to that I should be saying before it's too late. And it seems really important, especially in terms of that last line.
Yeah.
And maybe you can unpack my messy question.
Yeah, I mean, the second act is, I mean, I love making stories where you start off laughing and then maybe end up crying or something, but like something that is very, very funny until you realize it's deadly serious. I think that's musically a very rewarding form to work with, and also like a nice night at the opera in a way.
And all the feelings.
Exactly, yeah. And the whole story kind of ends with everyone being like this mass of lost souls, singing this chorus that ends with the words, "Oh well, oh yes, oh well, oh yes, we shall face apocalypse face first." And this obviously is a very, very bleak words, but I just thought, you know, as a composer, I'm very much inclined to always sort of do the opposite of what the text suggests, because I think that's richer. So the music itself is not bleak, but the text is. And then what does that mean when you combine those two things? Is it resilience? Is it hope? Is it, am I just poking fun at something? I think that's, as a composer, really, really, like, that's where I want to be with my music.
You'll get to the end and you'll have a lot of questions. But the journey is so interesting in that I felt there was this conversation that's happening between the orchestra and what's happening on stage in a way that is not typical of an opera that has the orchestra down in the pit. Or there's some kind of conversation that's happening between the two. Can you describe that a little bit or talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very, very colorful score, I would say, and also a very, very difficult one. But the orchestra is doing an amazing job. I think for me, it's really, you know, when you have so many characters, you want to, as a composer, try and make them as immediately understandable as you can. So, I mean, I tried to really like paint them as clearly as I could with all the little things available to me in the orchestra. You can see the percussion section and how many things and all kinds of strange sounds coming from instruments. Some things I've had to explain this week because it wasn't clear enough what I wanted. And that's also like one of my greatest joys as a composer is playing around with the orchestra and seeing what is possible to do with them.
Well, they had a wonderful time with that. Is there anything that you want to, anything else you want to tell us?
I can keep going forever. So it's a dangerous question to ask a composer. Is there anything specific I mean, we've had some chats. What do you think I should?
You talked about the waltz.
Oh yeah. No wait, which?
It's a song that.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah. So famously, like because there's two waltzes in this.
Oh right.
Two waltzes in the other one, and the one we're talking about doesn't really sound like a waltz in the end. Because famously, the famous tune that's associated with Titanic is, of course, Nearer My God to Thee. It's the famous story of that's what people heard the ship orchestra play as it was going down. But actually, there are multiple ear witness accounts, like people who had heard other things being played before they went into the lifeboats. And for me, like the hymn tune it was a bit too. It was very important to my grandparents, and I just I couldn't touch it for this. It would be sanctimony, what's the sacrilegious. But then I found out that there was this little salon piece called Chanson d'automne, Song of Autumn, like a really charming little piece. And then actually I decided in the sort of the interlude between the acts that I would try and do to this nice little piece what the sinking of the boat actually did to, or the hitting the iceberg hit to the boat. So I completely destroyed this waltz. You can hear little echoes of it, but you can also hear it breaking apart, like the ship broke apart once it was tipped enough. You can hear the water filling it, and you know, at the end, just like this sort of eerie, ghostly echo of the waltz as like the ship is sinking to the ocean.
As a composer, that must be so delicious to be able to use your music to make the story come alive.
It also took, I think I wrote 13 different versions of it before I was happy, but yeah, very, very satisfying.
One last question. What's your favorite English language phrase?
There's a lot. What I like a lot, just that someone can be the apple of your eye. That's adorable, because I also love apples a lot. And there's also a strange thing, because the Danish word for eyeball is eye-apple. And you know, somehow it's like a bit morbid, but it's also very sweet. I think it's very, very fascinating. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you. We hope you, thank you.